I'm going to give you a quick demonstration on how to make a lovely Christmas tree fun wirework ring. To do this, you'll only need a few materials, so we'll need some 0.8mm wire, some 0.4mm wire, and some basic tools. So you'll need your cutting pliers, you'll need some round nose pliers, some flat nose pliers, and if you've got one, a ring mandrel would be really helpful. So let's get straight in. First off, you'll want to cut yourself 3 lengths of 0.8mm wire. These are about 22 centimetres in length, and that'll give you plenty to play with and make your tree as big or as small as you like. And then we're going to use some 0.4 wire to bind these together. So I'm going to show you a very simple weave that will give you a really comfortable ring shank. I've cut around 1.5 meters of 0.4 wire. And I'm going to start in the centre of my 3 wires, my 3 0.8mm wires, and at the centre of my 0.4mm wire. That way I can work evenly along the lengths of wire with half of the 0.4 working this way and half working the opposite way. This should ensure that we get a nice even lengths at either end and we don't run out of wire either. So first thing I'm going to do is take that 0.4 around just one of those wires, okay, just like this. I'm going to hold this wire just down at the bottom and I'm going to work up this way for now. Then I'm going to bring in my other 2 0.8 wires that I've got pre-cut here and lay them parallel with the first one. And now I'm going to take that 0.4 wire and I'm going to go over to the centre wire and all the way around it, and then over the other outside wire, all the way around and back to the centre. So we only wrap around the centre wire, we come around the outside too, and then around the centre, around the other outside too, and then around the centre. So we're just taking it in turns, going around these 2 wires, and then the centre, and then these 2 wires and then the centre. We just take it in turn, so we're always going in the same direction. So we'll weave half of our ring shank in this direction using this technique, and then we'll swap sides and we'll do the other half. So just do a few more on here and then we'll go back through that and do that again on the other side. Now you will have to decide what size ring you want, so which finger it's going to sit on. And that will determine how long you will want your weave to be. So I'll weave along this side and then I'll switch around and weave along the other side. Now you will have 0.4 wire left, but don't cut that off. We'll need that when we come to the next part. So from the centre here, I just pick up where I left off and go the same weave. So around the bottom 2 wires here, and then just around the centre, around the top 2 wires and around the centre, bottom 2 and centre, top 2 and centre, and so on. And we'll keep going like that until we've got the length to go around our ring shank. So I've got some that I've done earlier that are ready. And I've got my ring mandrel here. So here's my weave. I've done it in 2 separate colours here so you can see it a bit more clearly. And you can see I've got an equal length of these tail 0.8mm wires at either end, and I've got my weave in the centre. I've also still got my 0.4mm wires attached, and we'll use those in just a minute. So I'm going to take my my weave roughly to the point on the mandrel that I want my ring size to be, and I'm going to take the wires all the way around and just allow them to cross over, just so that we can make sure that we've got enough weave to go all the way around our finger. Okay, I'm going to remove the ring shank for just a moment and I'm going to take my flat nose pliers and I'm going to start to manipulate these wires because we don't want them to overlap like this, we want them to sit next to each other. So I'm going to take this wire here and bring it out this way, and the middle wire I'm going to bring directly upwards. And then we'll do the same but on the other side. So we need to move these wires out the way and do that. We can always reshape this onto the ring shank later. Okay, so I'm going to grab hold of that and fold it out to the side. So basically we're just splaying these wires out. But if we use our pliers to do that, we can get nice tight bends so that they marry up nice and neatly. Okay, so like this and like this. So all of our wires are nicely splayed out. So let's pop that back on the ring mandrel so we can get that shape back. So back into the point that you wanted it to be on your mandrel and sit those nicely together. Okay, and then we can use those leftover 0.4 wires to start stitching or weaving the two halves or the two sides of your ring together. Now this doesn't have to be in any particular order. We're just trying to combine them and make sure that that ring doesn't pull apart when we put it on. So just take the wires wherever you feel they are going to help secure that into place. And then once you're happy that it's all secure and it's not going to pull apart, you can then snip off those excess wires. So I'm just coming around a couple of times, and then once I'm happy, I'll just cut those away. So I'm going to cut all these. Right, now we have 6 wires left to work with. So what I want to do is create a tree with spirals. So this wire here is going to be at the top. I'm going to have 2 wires in the center, and the bottom row of the tree is going to have 3 wires. So we're just going to position these out in that order. So we've got 3 sort of at the bottom, 2 for the middle layer, and 1 for the top. And now I'm going to trim these down because I don't want the spirals that I'm going to create to be this big. So I'm going to trim them down to around 4 centimeters in length each. That's about 2 inches. So just make sure that they are roughly even. We'll just do the bottom layer and then we'll play the other 2 by ear. So you might decide you want them a bit smaller, but we'll do these first and see how we go. So I'm going to take each one of these and spiral them. So I'm going to start on the 2 outside ones. So I'm going to use my round nose pliers. In fact, I'll remove my mandrel for now. You can keep it on if you want to, but it might be easier to hold if you've got it off the mandrel. So round nose pliers right onto the tip of that wire. Try not to have any protruding. And then we're going to turn a tiny little loop at the center of what will be a spiral to get us started. So we're going to start turning that spiral there. Once we've got so far into our spiral, we'll need to swap, take our flat nose pliers and hold across the spiral and carry on spiraling that inwards, okay, all the way up to meet the ring shank. Okay, so we're just going to pop that there, and then we're going to roll it right in, but not quite to the center, okay? Then we'll do the same on the other side, but we're going to do the spiral in the opposite direction. So where we spiraled outwards here, we're going to spiral outwards on this one as well. So I'm going to take my round nose pliers again, right at the center of that, right on the tip of the wire, right at the tip of the pliers to get that nice small spiral. Spiral it in as far as you can go with your round, then swap to your flat nose and roll that spiral up to meet the ring shank. So all the way up to match the other side. Okay, so you can see you've got one either side, and now this one we're going to spiral and we're going to sit it between the 2. Okay, so we may need to maneuver them slightly as we go, but we can do that along the way. So this one I'm going to now spiral. So it doesn't matter which direction you do this one because it's going to sit in the middle. So again, tiny loop at the center, then swap to your flat nose pliers and hold flat across and turn that spiral in. You can see I'm letting that sit on top of my finger when I'm doing that. That's just to sort of keep it nice and neat and help me keep an eye on where it is. Okay, so when I get to here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop there and I'm going to hold that spiral and I'm going to flip it over so that I can then push it and it sits in a row with the 2 that I've done before. Okay, and now I'm going to do the middle row. So exactly the same again, but this time I'm going to keep the spirals the same. So I'm going to make sure that I cut them down to that 2 inches again, like I did before. It's 2 inches, roughly 4 centimeters or 2 inches. Just make sure that they're the same size. Okay, and we're going to spiral again. So this side, I'm going to spiral inwards towards the center. Taking and swapping my pliers when I need to, holding and turning. Okay, so we're going to put that into there, and we're going to just lift, because you can see the workings underneath. So when we get to almost the centre, we're just going to lift that spiral slightly and just push it so that it sits in between the two on the bottom row. Do the same on this side. I'm going to take my pliers and I'm going to roll it inwards towards the centre, and then take my flat nose across the top and roll inwards just as we have before. It's good to get a good grip on across the spirals. You think you might mark the wire, but it's actually better to grip it tightly than let the spiral slip within your pliers. Okay, so again, once we've got to this point here, we're just going to lift it slightly and move it so it sits between the two spirals that you've got on the bottom row. Okay, so I think you can see where this is going. We're going to now do the top spiral. And I'm going to show you something else you can do. So can you see how I centered it there? So I brought the wire so that it came out from the center of the two spirals. That would just help it sit nicely. I'm going to cut this one down, and I'm going to cut it a little bit longer, this one, so about 5 centimeters, so just about 2¼ inches or so, 2½ inches. And then I'm going to spiral it just the same. And again, because it's the top one, it doesn't really matter which direction you spiral in, just whichever is most comfortable for you. I'm going to hold across here, and I'm going to keep spiraling down until we're almost at the top of our tree. Okay, so once I get to about here, I want to flip it over so that it sits centrally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to straighten that up. So I'm going to hold my pliers just under where the end of my spiral is, and I'm just going to pull that spiral across so that it sits on the top of that wire like a lollipop rather than like sort of round like a pea shape. And then from there I'm going to hold on to that point there where I've just straightened it, and I'm going to flip it over so that the spiral sits neatly on the top, forming that pyramid triangle shape. Ooh. And you can see where I turned it, I've got that little point. Now that little point, you can leave that like that as a little nod to the Christmas tree, or you can pop a little star or a crystal on the top and top it off like you would your Christmas tree at home. So a quick, simple Christmas tree ring tutorial to get you in the festive mood.